appreciate being asked. I'm always happy to do anything for Howe Library. I was explaining to both Jared and Megan that I grew up in Hanover. And so the original Howe Library that was in a very old house in town was where I used to hang out as a child. So, you know, what goes around comes around, right? So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Jared, is that good?
Yeah, that's perfect.
There we go. All right. So Jared has already given a very nice introduction to me, but this is, I do aerial photography. I do landscapes, nature, and bird photography. And I also do family photo sessions. And I got my first DSLR, 2011. I was always doing, you know, snapshot stuff, but I really became interested in 2011. And I've worked really hard. I started the Queechee Area Camera Club, which is open to anyone, beginners all the way up to professional. I photograph weddings, events, magazine covers, golf courses. I've taken workshops all over the country in Iceland, which has been an incredible experience. I've just absolutely loved that. And as Jared said, I was very honored to have 5 of my images on the Winter Scenes postal stamps. I lead workshops, and I've co-led workshops as well as presented at many venues. And I also do one-on-one mentoring with photographers to help them take their photography to the next level. My husband got me a drone in the fall of 2019. Surprise, Lisa, why don't you try this? I took my Part 107 Airman certification in January. And so I am I do have a Part 107 Airman certificate. And it just opens up so much more possibility with my photography. And I basically call my drone my tripod in the sky. You don't really just go out and fly. I know people do, but just as there are rules of the road and you have to know how to go around a rotary or how to go in and out of traffic and what roads you can go on and which direction to go, there are rules of the sky. And so regulations change at a fast pace, but I'm going to try to, you know, give you some guidelines here that you can learn. There are no-fly zones that are local, state, and federal. And you really need to know some of those. So what is a drone? A drone is an unpiloted, unmanned aircraft. They're called UAV, UAS, a quadcopter, or my phrase, a tripod in the sky. So, and many people love to do videos and do that, and other people like to do still photography. This particular image shows a different viewpoint of the world. And that's what I'm loving about the aerial photography, is I'm always trying to show a different viewpoint of what I see, and the drone is just absolutely changing the way that I do that. Purchasing a drone. Somebody asked about what to look for earlier in the chat session. Well, you want to figure out what it is you want to do. DJI is the most popular. Autel is pretty remarkable camera systems, more if you're getting beyond the DJI and want a real professional camera system. The Parrot is a pretty much beginner. And the Skydio is, if you really want to go out skateboarding and have it follow all your moves, that's the best one to really follow over your shoulder. So what I do is I really kind of work backwards, and I figure out what I want to do, what's in my budget, and then figure out what will work. I buy much of my camera gear from B&H Photo, and I bought my drone from Hunts, but you can also buy them on Amazon and Best Buy. Oftentimes when I'm purchasing a piece of equipment like this, I'll call B&H Photo and ask them some questions. And then I'll call back the next day, and you usually get a different person. If you ask the same questions and the answers are the same, you're kind of on the right track. It's so hard because there's no real camera stores in our backyard anymore. Okay, and I'm stuck again, and I'm not sure why. Well, isn't this something?
Neither your arrows nor the cursor is working?
My arrows won't work, and my cousin.
How about if you click on the screen to make sure that's the application that's active?
There we go. It went. Thank you. Sorry about that. Something's going on. I'm sure it's operator error, though. Dji Mini. The Dji Mini 2 is kind of a good starter drone. I'm going to give you 3 options for DJI. You can see this is held in the palm of a hand. It's fairly small. It's basically, think of the camera as a cell phone in the air, 12 megapixels. It's got a very small sensor. The quality of the images are mediocre. It's got downward obstacle sensors, but it's a great starter drone. And I put in the package the Fly More combo. I like the Fly More combo. It gives you 3 batteries. You have to understand that they say it gives you 30 minutes of flight time. Well, you want to pull it back when you've got 20% left. And if it's windy or it's cold or it's really hot, you're going to start losing your flight time. So it's really important to think about having more than 1 battery.
Be on YouTube as well.
Excuse me? Okay. And the DJI Mavic Air 2 is kind of the middle of the road. It's a great compromise between the price and the image quality. This gives you 34 minutes of flight time. You've got now 24 megapixels and you've got a 1/2-inch sensor. And this is, again, I just think it's a really good features. It's got a nice feature set. And, again, you got to think about a budget, but it has more obstacle avoidance sensors, which is something I think is good. This is the one that I have. There's a picture of me that was taken for a magazine article. And you can see the size of my drone, the DJI Mavic 2 Pro in my hand. This gives you a 1-inch sensor, which means I've got more flexibility with my images, 20 megapixels. I can shoot RAW. I've got omnidirectional obstacle warning. And I will tell you a funny story about that. So that helps you so you don't crash. It is not 100%. I've got friends who have still crashed into trees because they were flying so fast. But I went out to do a new video, particularly for this workshop. And I went out with a friend of mine who has a canoe, and he flies his little Mini all the time. And he has between the 2 seats of the canoe a piece of plywood. And he said, we'll just fly from there. I said, okay. So off we go onto the lake, and he flies his off and I fly mine off, and we're both having a good time and we're practicing. And all of a sudden I say, well, I'm at 22%. I'm going to bring mine back. Well, I had forgotten to take off my omnidirectional obstacle warning. So my drone would come right over to where I want it and would get right next to the canoe and the 2 of us, and it would back up. And it would come forward and then it would back up. And so finally, my buddy Brian had to grab it out of the air. And then I had to disconnect the controller to get it to stop. But as the power's going down, you're going, okay, I'm now at 20%. I'm now at 18%. I'm at 16%. And we still don't have it in the canoe. So, something to think about ahead of time. So it was an exciting moment in time, but not one I need to repeat. Okay, this is a picture of my controller. I just put the drone on my kitchen table and I'm just looking out the door just so you can see. You can see that my iPhone is sitting right into the bottom of this, and it's plugged in on the left-hand side. And then that's what my controller looks like. And then you can actually see it says ready to go on my phone. I'm connected to the DJI app, and all my settings are now right on my phone through the app. So I can change my video settings, my camera settings. I can make it go forward, up and down. I can change, whatever I need to change. Got a little map in the bottom left. So it's just fun to see, what exactly are you going to be, seeing and that's what mine looks like. Each of the controllers look a little different, but I thought that would be interesting for everybody to see. Okay, safety first. Learn the rules of the sky. And I would recommend you pick a large open area to practice, away from people, cell towers, power lines. Register your drone with the FAA, do your homework and practice. I'm out on the golf course early in Quiche, where I live, and you can see the maintenance workers have come out on the course, but my drone is behind me. And if you know this golf course, there's a river behind me. And so my drone is over the river. So I know that I'm not over any people, maintenance workers coming and going, walkers, bikers, which all happen at Quiche. I am making sure that it is not over anybody. Because if it falls out of the sky, it could hurt somebody. So just some common sense stuff there. All right. Hobbyist or commercial? It's basically, do you want to fly for fun or money? Even if you're flying for money, it's fun though. It is, just some questions to ask yourself are here. and we do want to have fun. They're very popular. The regulations are changing quickly, but you need to really kind of centralize what it is that you want to do with this. And regardless of what you are going to do, you do need to be responsible. So do you want to share images with your family? Do you want to do something for your YouTube channel? Do you want to sell your photos or your services? You know, and that will help you decide whether you need to go for your Part 107 Airman certificate or not. Okay. There are a lot of places that, you know, building inspections, if somebody wants to do it for money, solar inspections, they use them out west for their ranches to see how their cattle's doing or where their cattle is. There's a lot of different places. In fact, there's one story down in the Outer Banks. It's now being stopped, but for a while, the fishermen that were casting from the shore, and they have to cast their lure and their bait out beyond the breakers, which is hard to do. They were paying the drone operators to carry their bait and their lure beyond the breakers to give them a better chance of getting onto a fish. And so creative, but you know, it's not something that they're allowing so much anymore. But there are a lot of different ways. You know, they're now being used for deliveries. So, but for me, this is the magic of the drone. This is getting out early as soon as the sun has risen, the fog in the valley. You know, that to me, the mystique of being able to see this from the air with this picture, telling a story with your camera. Hobbyist, you still have to know some of the rules of the sky. Here's how you register your drone. It's up at the top here, so feel free to click on that. All drones must be registered if they don't have to be registered if they weigh less than 0.55 pounds. So the Mini does not need to be registered. The others do. The registration number needs to be on the outside of your drone. And if you're 13 and older that owns a drone that weighs more than the 0.55 pounds, you must register your drone. These are the key things if you're going to be a hobbyist that you need to know. You don't fly above 400 feet. You keep your drone within sight. Now, if you go behind a tree and you can find it again, that's fine. But you don't want to fly it so far away that you can no longer see it. You stay 5 miles away from heliports and airports. We've already talked about not flying over people, stadiums, sports events. Emergency response efforts, absolutely not. Don't fly under the influence. You can fly between sunrise and sunset. And yes, that is a point in time, believe it or not. And there are people on the web who are putting up on Facebook or putting up on YouTube, and they've got pictures of them flying the drone before the sun comes up, and they're getting caught because sunrise is a point in time. It is a minute, and you need to know what that is each day. You don't fly from a moving vehicle. There's no flying in national parks or wilderness areas, and now there's no flying in state parks, New Hampshire state parks, without a Part 107 and a waiver. And there are local, state, and national rules and regs. So when I was in Florida a year ago, you could not fly in their state parks. And there's basically an airport around every corner. So it was really hard to find some places to fly. You might think that you can go over to a great spot that I love to hike is Boston Lot Lake. If you come up from the Wilder side and you hike up, I don't know, that doesn't take very long. And you get up to this kind of remote pond and it's just beautiful. And you'll see some bikers and maybe some walkers and some fishermen. I take the grandkids up there fishing. It's just lovely. But guess what? That is part of the Lebanon Airport air system. You cannot fly there. Plus, if you go on the other side, there's the Dartmouth-Hitchcock Hospital and they have a heliport. So you have to know where in the area you can actually fly. And there are apps that I'll get to that will tell you about that. So you need to do your homework. And okay, let's keep going. Details. My DJI, my Mavic 2 Pro has geofencing built in, and that will identify restricted airspace. So if I went there up to Boston Lot and tried to fly, it would not allow me to fly. If I was just outside the airport configuration airspace, it would say it would come up with a yellow, caution, I am near an airspace. But if you don't have that, you can use the FAA's Before You Fly app to plan your mission and your flying route. And yes, we call it a mission, so that's what it is. The FAA is now looking at creating a knowledge test for recreational flyers. That may even happen by the end of the year. By 2023, all drones will need to have a GPS chip on them so the FAA knows when a drone is lifted into the air. And there are rules now that they've passed that you could fly over people in at night, but the rules are so strict right now and so difficult you really can't. But I like to fly early morning for 2 reasons. The light is absolutely amazing and there are fewer people out and about. So it's just fun to do. Okay, if you're a commercial drone operator, selling your work or getting paid for it requires the Part 107 remote pilot certificate. Plain and simple. I actually, and if you can see the red in the bottom, by all means, click on that so you can find these again. There are lots of things in the test: airport patterns, airspace, classes of airspace, how to read aeronautical maps, lots of weather stuff, load principles, no-fly zones like MOAs, military operation areas. They're like roadways in the sky. And there are no-fly zones because the military pilots use them to practice and they fly low and fast. And we've seen them here in the Valley. So I actually took the Pilot Institute course. There are quite a few courses you can get online. This one was not just to pass the test. This was to give you a comprehensive information. And I took a month to take different, you take certain parts of it. There's a quiz. And then if you don't get that, you go back. And it's a good system. I've also had friends that have done, you looked at the Tony Northrup study guide and his YouTube videos, and you could do that and get a sense of whether your background information, you might have enough information so you don't have to take a full course. The J. Rupert Law, I like his knowledge test because you can practice a test and then he'll explain why the answer is the correct answer. And this also gives you step-by-step instructions on how to get a drone license from Rupert Law. So that's a nice setup there. But it's a commitment to get so I just threw these in. I'm not going to spend time on them, but just take a look and realize that there's aeronautical maps here that you have to learn. You got to know the difference between magnetic and true north. You've got to understand what the numbers on a runway mean. And even in the first one, where are the cloud clearance operated SUAS and the NAS? And what's AGL and MSL? Which did they use it? So those are just a few things, just quickly, just to give you a sense. It's not to scare you. I got through it. If I can do it, anybody can. Commercial flying. And we talked about this, but you can get paid for your services, sell your drone photos. I can apply for waivers for these things to operate from a moving vehicle, fly at night with proper lights, fly over people soon. So there's different things that you can do. I can get a waiver to fly near airports. So there are some advantages to the 107. Okay, websites to help you learn. I like the Drone Trainer. Jared asked me before we came online, how difficult was it to learn? Well, it takes a commitment. I mean, I told him I wish I'd learned to play video games as a child because I would know how all these stick things go. But this is really good. It's a free training course. Full disclosure, they ask for your email. They want to get you on their mailing list. But I still thought this was really good. And it will tell you some of the basic things. If you go with the DJI drone, there are tons and tons of very good YouTube videos on different things to learn, on how to learn to do it. But this, I just wanted to put that up there so that you had some information. Okay, pre-flight checklist. They're very big on pre-flight checklists. And it's a lot of information on a screen, but I'm going to go through this because I just think it's really important. The first thing you need to know is, where are you going to fly? Are you going to go to Boston Lake? I don't think so. Is it public or private? Do you have at least 3 statute miles visibility? Is it foggy? You want to be under 20 mile per hour winds, and that means gusts too, and the precipitation less than 10%, cloud-based surroundings, batteries, are they all charged? Have you figured out your camera settings and got them in there? Do the propellers look good? Do they sound okay? Is your controller charged? Is your cell phone charged? I learned very early on that I didn't have a full charge on my cell phone, and all of a sudden I'm looking and my controller is down to like 20%. Well, it was trying to charge my iPhone, and therefore it was losing its charge. So make sure your iPhone is charged, format your SD card in the drone, and do your updates while you're at home. Again, I've gotten to where I want to fly. and all of a sudden it's saying, oh, we need to update your drone app. And now you're sitting out there wasting your battery in the field, and it's not what you want to do. So those are some of the things, and you can copy this one. You can go online and figure your own one out, but you need a pre-flight checklist. Camera settings. So depending, you can shoot in auto. You can certainly do that. I like to shoot in RAW because I've got more information and I can adjust the colors in post and bring back more details in post. I shoot at f2.8 or f4. You're a long ways away. It's a Hasselblad camera on my camera. F4 is probably a little bit sharper, but either one's going to be pretty sharp. I'm down at the lowest ISO I can use because you get, again, more details, better color. I fix white balance in post because I do a lot of post processing, and I do what's called auto exposure bracketing. And this I set for 3 to 5 image. So if it will take an image that's a little bit darker, one that's exposed for the center, and one's exposed a little bit lighter. So this is a very foggy scene, but you can see at the top of the image is very light and the bottom of the image is a little bit darker. And sometimes the camera can't see all the light and all the dark. So if I take one with all light settings and one with all dark settings, I can actually combine them in post in Lightroom or Photoshop and come up with a better exposed image. So that's what I do there. But you can also start shooting in auto if you're basic with the camera. Okay, this is an assignment I had. It's again a Quiche where they wanted the tennis courts and the bridge in the same image. So I actually put my drone up, and when you put your drone up in the air, it hovers. It just sits there. And so I just moved my camera and I put it in the center. I was dead center, and I just moved my camera over to the left, and I took a picture, and then I moved it a third of the way. So it was a third of the way, and I think I took 5 images, and then again I combined them. So that's another thing that you can do. So not only am I combining images to make lights and darks look better, I can combine images to make a nice long pano. Maybe something would be a little more interesting than this, but I just wanted to show you what could be done. Okay, these are some of my apps, and phone apps are important. The Air map is a little bit more, that's where I'm going to get waivers. That's where I'm going to get in touch with the, let's say, I want to make sure that I'm in a fly zone as opposed to a no fly. I can get instant access to airspace if I'm in fact have an assignment and I am going to be on the border of the airport. I can actually get instant access and say, I'm going to be flying here at 9 o'clock this morning. Is that okay with you guys, or should I adjust? So that's kind of neat. Before you fly is one that is really good. You can see it's very simple. And I put this up because you can see where the Lebanon airport is. So the airspace comes all the way up into Hanover, all the way over to Wilder, and then quite a bit further south. So you can see that it's a chunk there that you really need to take a look at. The UAV forecast is my favorite app. I use that all the time. It gives me, you can see the one on the left is not good to fly. It's in red. The one on the right is good to fly. And if you see the difference, the one on the left, the gusts are 28 miles per hour. Well, I had mentioned earlier, 20 is kind of the max. And now, can you fly more than that? Absolutely. Will you get shaky pictures? Probably. If you're going to fly in that kind of gusts and that type of wind and you want to actually take videos, it's going to be really hard to get smooth, nice, easygoing shots. So, but this gives me my sunrise, my sunset, my temperature, the weather, winds, the gusts, cloud cover. So, and you can see in both of these, it says in one of them, it's one heliport nearby, and the other, it's one airport and heliport nearby. So, good information for you. And I like that it's red, and it's just visually really, really nice. Okay. All right. Develop your own on-location checklist. One of the key things you want to remember to do first is take the camera guard off, or the gimbal guard off your camera, or you will damage the gimbal. It's a very sophisticated gimbal on the camera that, and you have a camera guard, that you put on it, and you want to make sure that you take that off before you start it up. Once you get there, you absolutely look around for obstacles. there's something called return to home altitude. So if I need to get it back, let's say it's just gone out of sight a little bit. Oh my gosh, there's a tree and I can't quite see it. You can actually press return to home and it will go up to the altitude that you set. And then it will come straight back over your body, over where you are, because that's where you started it. And then it will come down. The problem is that if you've not set that altitude high enough, it could actually run into a tree or a mountain. And so I think I have mine set at 200 feet and it works great. I'll show you one image where it didn't work, but you know, for most images, it works great. And sometimes if I'm doing near lakes and stuff and I get it against the background of the trees, it's hard to see it sometimes. So I'll just say return to home and it'll come up and then immediately you see it and then I'll turn it off. Always double check the weather when you arrive at your location. Find a flat place to launch your drone. Do not launch from your car. It will interfere with your GPS. Make sure you attach the cell phone to the controller, turn on your app, turn on the controller, turn on your drone, calibrate your compass. I tend to do it every single time. They say you don't have to, but I like to do that. Set the home point and don't drain your battery. I talked about the 20% rule. So it's very important that you try to come back. You don't want your battery to run out and it to drop out of the sky. Okay, practice with my fun little emoji thingies here. Once you go and you start practicing, practice your takeoff and landings first. Hover a little bit, land again, get comfortably. Slowly play with your controls. Fly different maneuvers. Figure 8, a square, a rectangle, an oval, with all my cute little smiling faces there. Always keep the front of the drone facing away from you. Because the minute you turn your drone around and the drone is now looking at you, all of your controls are going to work the opposite. Now just think about that. You finally learned which way to push things to get them to go forward and up and down and sideways. And now you turn, and now if the drone is coming at you, all of those are the other way. So always keep the drone facing away from you until you really learn how to do this. After powering off, you just want to really make sure there's no dew on it. You might have gone up and there was a little bit of fog even. Put it away carefully in a padded case, put on your gimbal protective, and then make sure that when you get home, you immediately recharge batteries, recharge controller, download your images, and put on a new SD card. Just get in the habit of doing that as your checklist. And I recommend to people that you know, I write these out and take them with you. If you're going to go practice, make a checklist and go practice. But you'll know what you get and what you learn. Okay, making mistakes and how to avoid them. These are 3 great videos that I recommend. Jevin Dovey is great. He's got 13 drone moves to fly like a pro, which is good. But then he's got these 10 biggest and 20 biggest mistakes. And if you can watch these, you're going to really get a sense of, you know, make sure you take your gimbal cover off because you can ruin your camera if you don't. So there's little things like that. So it's really important to watch those, and they're fun. And you'll realize very soon that every mistake that's been made, I've probably done, and every other drone operator has too. So I'm going to try to caution you not to be like the rest of us. Learn to figure out, you know, how not to make the mistakes. This image, I wanted to talk about. I want to give you some ideas on how to take some of these images, both as still images and you know, moving video. This is a pond I love to photograph. I am vertically challenged at 5'4", and this was across the pond, and the fog was coming in and moving at sunrise, and it was just magical and misty. And I knew that I wanted to put this into this kind of a long, elongated pano. And this is not taken with 5 different shots. This is one shot, and then I cropped it into this shape. Because the fog was moving so much, I couldn't have done the 5. I think it would have looked kind of funky. But I knew I wanted, if this opened up, this was the shot I wanted. So I kind of had it in my head. I knew kind of where I wanted to go at the end of it. I was taking 5 images so that I had different exposures that I then combined. And I flew out to the middle of the pond and then decided to go up and down to see where I needed to be. I wasn't flying I was up maybe 40 feet, 50 feet, something like that. But it was just, I put in a new battery before I started because I wasn't sure what was going to happen. If the fog came in really quick, I might have had a little fumbling to get mine back. So, you know, I was really kind of watching the fog, watching the hillside, hoping for an opening, and making sure I knew where my drone was and I wasn't out of battery. So little multitasking going on there, but I'm pleased with the shot. And again, this is why I love to do drone photography. And it was obviously Mother Nature helping me and some luck as well. Video settings. When you're taking video, you got to research the best settings for your specific drone. I'm going to give you a few ideas, but every drone is different. And so you want to, what you're looking for is to try to find the best settings so you're going to be able to smooth out your video. And you fly slower than you think you do. And you want your frame rates to be 24 if they're cinematic, or 30 or 40 if you want YouTube or family videos. The profile basically for the DJI or the Mavic 2 Pro, those will just capture more dynamic range for you. Codec is just putting everything together in the back of the computer, part of the drone stuff, etc. And what you really want to do is, so the codec really, the video files are big, and it's basically helping to shrink them down so they're manageable. White balance, many videographers will set their white balance for the specific location, because as you think about this, if in fact you're taking a video and you're going to piece some pieces together, you want them all to look the same tone. And at times, you can do some of that in post, but many of them will do the white balance for the specific location. It's a choice there. So again,
Lisa,
yes.
If I could interrupt with a question. Someone's
Absolutely.
asking, why is the frames per second higher for YouTube than for cinematic?
That's a very good question. And I don't think I have the answer. Let me think about that. I don't have an answer for that. I tend to use 24 or 40 or 24 or 30 all the time. I tend to use 30 frames per second, kind of in between everything. But I don't have an answer for that. I'm trying to think if the 40 would be less. I don't know. I'm not sure. I will try to get an answer for that though. I'm thinking about it. If anybody has that answer out there, let me know. But I'm not sure of that. Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay. Drone videography. So, when you think about a good image with a leading line, like you can see here, and it's pulling your eye into the frame, doing drone videography is still the same kind of thing. You want to have a story to tell. You need to have some sort of a subject. You need to really watch the obstacles to avoid. You still need a pre-flight checklist. You still need that flight map in your head. Are you going to do some pullbacks away from the subject? You're going to pull forward. So if you were flying this scene, that's why I put this in here, you might fly down the edge of the water there and out to the right, and then you might fly back around the trees or something. You might fly out a little bit, or you might fly up, or you might fly low. You're going to come in from the side, or you're going to come in from the left side, or you're going to go up on top and look straight down. So there's lots of different things there to do as well, to try to figure out, different ways to make the story be told. Number one mistake people make is they forget to turn on the record button, or they forget to turn off the record button. So, it seems pretty simple and we can laugh about it, but I've done it. A lot of my friends have done it. So it's, you've got to remember to turn on and turn off. And as I said earlier, it's smooth and slow. So that's the key there. Okay, drone moves. As I talked about it, there are some drone moves. And by learning to do the squares and the figure eights and the circles and the rectangles and the ovals that I talked about earlier, you want to be able to know how to come into your subject and then pull away slowly. Then you want to come from where I am and then go toward your subject. You want to go sideways. I mean, if you have a beautiful sunrise, you just kind of go sideways along the horizon, very, very slow. And you can move the drone up above something and look straight down, or you can spin and keep your subject in the frame. So there's some really good moves there. And again, I gave you some more ideas here of where to go and do some research on exactly why different ideas to do, and to practice and to start thinking about, to take yourself, where do I want to go with my videography? Everybody kind of has their own thing. This is my, I made this movie on May 7th. I was telling you about going out with this canoe. A friend and I went paddling. And so what I did is the first 2 shots were taken with my Nikon at sunrise as still shots. You're going to see a couple pictures of loons that were taken that morning from the canoe, again with a camera, and everything else is video that I've spliced together in iMovie. And I've done quite a few Ken Burns effects. That's kind of, you'll see panning in and panning out is kind of the Ken Burns effect. And you'll notice that if you listen carefully, you'll hear loons at the beginning with music behind it. So I've done 2 soundtracks that feed on each other. And so what I've tried to do here is show you the possibilities of combining still images with video footage, transitions between them, and then music. So. So when I talk about fun, it's fun. It's just so much fun to make these videos. It's so much fun to do this with a friend. It's fun to take the still photography. It's fun to take videos and then figure out, you know, what can you do with them? It's pretty exciting stuff. For editing and post-processing, I could have put a ton of stuff here. For my still photos, I use Adobe Lightroom. I used iMovie for Mac as a freebie to do my video. Adobe Premiere Pro is the key one to use. It's the pro version. iMovie for Mac, and there's several that you can get for HP as well. And that's just a matter of Googling what will work with your system. So kind of fun, but I do post-processing on all of my still images and all of my videos. Okay, tips for getting creative images from the air. So finding locations is different than when you're on the ground. Think rivers, streams, leading lights, roads, ponds, and marshes. These happen to be some 5 beaver ponds that I have known about for years, have gone and photographed them, and they've kind of grown up now. But after this early snowfall, this past fall, at the end of fall, I just threw the drone up and thought we'd see what happened. And it was just made a very stunning picture. If in fact I was going to do something with the video here to give those that want to get into video more, you know, think about, this might be one where you go up on top and you look straight down and maybe spin around a bit, or you might come in from the left and follow that tree line and come in toward one of the ponds. Looking down on the right side where all the trees are, all the leaves have fallen off might be interesting. Just flying over the ponds very slowly and kind of going out of the frame at the end could be a good ending. So you kind of look at a scene and you start to say, well, what story do I want to tell? Obviously, this is all about the beaver ponds. It's about the snow on the end of fall. It's about the texture. So how do you tell that story so when your audience is looking at it, they really get a sense of that? So there's some creative touches that you could do with this. Okay, this is where I had mentioned that my return to home did not work. I was flying in this area and it was very hard to see my drone among the trees. And all of a sudden I lost it it was there and then it was gone. And so I knew I just had to I actually walked up the road a bit until I kind of moved it so I could see it. If I had done return to home, and I'm standing behind all of this, I didn't know if it would go up and go into the other mountain. I just didn't know where, so I had to be really careful here. So that's why they tell you to keep your drone in line of sight. And so just by walking a few paces away and moving it a little bit, I had a different angle and I could then see it. So this is in southern Vermont, and leading lines is always something. In an image, whether it's videography or a picture, the lightest part of the image is what you see the most. So if you have a white spot, if you look off to the far right, that white is up there, but the road is also white. So that white road catches your eye and starts to bring you into this incredible V of fall foliage. So, and again, this would have been a very hard scene to video because of the mountains and because of the close context of those mountains. You could have done a nice little loop down the center here, but I think I would have been a little careful about going up on the sides of the mountains just because it was so hard to see the drone with the dense vegetation. So you just have to be careful of that. And so to be able to see my drone better for this spring, I went and got what's called a skin, and it's an orange skin. And I was thinking that's going to be really good, but now that I'm looking at this picture, it may not work as well as I think. So anyway, whatever we could do to help out. This is called framing. And this is just here on Dewey's Pond in Quechee. And I was very careful with the geese. I'm actually up pretty high, and then I cropped the picture. So they could care less. You could see they're just sitting there. They're not even looking up at me. They couldn't care less. But as I said, I'm up pretty high. So I never want to disturb wildlife. And I did crop this in into a square, which I thought was the right thing to do with the compositional elements that I'm using. So framing of the green lily pads bring you into, the geese sitting there, and the one that's, in the water there is dipping his nose, his beak in, and it just brings your eye into the scene. So, and you could, if you wanted to, and I wanted to do a drone video, I could have easily been above this and spun around them to create an image as part of it. So the other thing that you can do is do families. This happens to be last fall, a photograph of my family. And if you hand your 9-year-old the controls, he'll smile at the drone as opposed to smiling with grandma. So again, you notice I'm not over the family. I'm not on top of them. The drone is basically a tall stepladder in the sky. And, we just wanted to do that. So we just wanted to, but again, if I wanted to do a drone video, I could have started the drone closer to us and then pulled back and then seen their house behind them, or something like that to give more context if I wanted to actually do a movie. So I hope that's helping you with that kind of stuff. Okay, these are two of my very favorite drone pictures, very different. You can see the one on the left is obviously all about looking down, a total different viewpoint. I guess it's a bird's eye view in total reality. Showing you some of the water, some of the trees, just catches your eye. So I just love that one. And then the one on the right with the birches, this is just at the end of winter. You can see a little bit of snow in the back there. This was a hard one. I'm on a road, on a back road. To access this, I had to go up and over a power line, up and over a lot of trees, actually through the trees, through the power line. Once I got up and over that, then I had to come down on the other side of it and then position where my drone would be. And then, of course, I had to repeat all of that so that I didn't hit the power lines and I didn't hit the trees. And it was a very narrow spot. So that's why you go and practice at the field, so that you can, in fact, maneuver into really cool shots like this. No other way I could have gotten this. It was actually on posted property, and I would never go on posted property. And it's out in the boonies and on a back road, but it's still posted property, so I don't go past trespassing signs. But it's an incredible birch grove. So I'm always looking for fresh angles and patterns, and that's certainly not a place you could fly a drone. I would never fly a drone in that space with the power lines and stuff. I mentioned that I really like early morning photography. And as you can see, here I am, early morning photography. The sun has just risen. You can see that it's off to my right and it's highlighted the left. And again, I'm telling a story, trying to create an emotional connection with the viewer. This is, again, 5 images that I took and then combined at least 3 of them. So to get some of those lights and some of those darks to combine. because it was pretty dark on the right side and at the bottom of the left. The light was just hitting the top of those trees on the left. So I had to bring in some, some extra stuff here to try to really get the feel, but the feeling of the fog and the color on the trees to catch your eye. Perspective. This is what I was talking about, looking straight down. And yes, I do wish that was a red tractor, but we live in John Deere country and red tractors are hard to find. But, again, he's haying, and what a great perspective. We all know what he's doing, but what a great perspective to see this. And again, if I wanted to do a video of this, I could easily spin around him as he's mowing a little bit, and that would just be a really cool shot. So starting to get a sense of different ways to look at the world that we're viewing. This is the Quechee, whoops, come back. This is the Quechee golf course. Early one morning. This is not something you just go out and get. There are a couple of people on this call who know me very well and are from Quechee, and I go out morning after morning. I knew I wanted something that would create atmosphere here. And that was the fog. That's what I finally got. I think it was five days in a row when I was trying to get something that would create a different image here. And you just don't get a winning image every time. It just doesn't happen that way. But you plan and you think and you go, okay, this is kind of what I want. And I want to show the golf course and I want to be able to do this, but I need some atmosphere. So that's what I was looking for. The sun is starting to hit on some of the trees. And, it's going to be a nice day on the golf course. So it's kind of fun to do that. But that's kind of what I try to do. Plan your shot ahead of time. This is right after sunrise, like a minute after sunrise. So understand that you're not going to necessarily see a ball of sun there because the sun comes up, but we've got a very hilly state. So sunrise may be at 5:30 in the morning, but at a particular location, you may not see it coming over the hill until 5:35 or 5:40 even. So this is sunrise. Again, I photograph this lake a lot. I love it, but I can't take this with my regular camera because I can't get to the middle of the lake and get this angle. And that's what I was after. Again, atmosphere, fog. I knew ahead of time I love this long, narrow shape, this pano shape. Again, this is the way I cropped it. And I plan ahead and go back to the same location time and time again to get a lot of these kinds of images. And one thing I do like to do when I'm doing videography is I like to fly low over the water. Now, again, there are certain places in Vermont. I don't know about New Hampshire, but there are plenty of lakes here. I do a lot of loon photography from my kayak. And there are lots of posted signs, no aerial photography from May to October. And that's because loons are nesting for the most part. Sometimes it's also, there might be heron nests there. They don't want the wildlife disturbed. And certainly loons, when they're starting to nest, they can't be skittish. They can't have the geese kicking them off their nests or they won't be successful. And so you have to look when you go to those ponds on their boards that are there to see. So you've got to just be careful of that. But I do like when I'm doing videography is fly low over the water and then come up at the end. And it just gives a beautiful expanse. So again, something to practice before you do it, or it's easy to drop that drone right into the drink, so to speak. I talked about same location, different viewpoint, different time of day. This happens to be Smith Pond. If any of you are familiar with hiking up to Smith Pond, always remember that the camera takes 2D images. We see in 3D. So anything you do, whether it's drone photography or regular photography or videography, you need to create depth. And you can see the islands do that here, the clouds in the background. There's a foreground, a middle, and a background. And that's something to look for at all your photography, whether it's movie type photography or still photography. You want to create that sense of depth so the eye goes through the image. But I go back to the same locations, different time, different times of the year. Tell a story. Tell a story. Figure out what the story is you want to tell and tell it. This is all about a Vermont farm in the fall. You notice there's not much sky. The sky is just the sunset never really happened. There was a little bit of pink way off to the left. It just never really happened. So I didn't put a lot of sky into the image. So think about what's important. Same thing goes when you're doing videography. Are you going to include a lot of the sky, or don't you need the sky? So you've got to really think about your composition in whatever kind of photography you're doing. If I was going to do video, I might fly down this road. I might fly high up like this and then drop down, or I might start low and then come up and show the scene. So there's lots of ways to tell the story here. And I'd go very, very slow. I'd go under 100 feet. And I would go real slow and just, pull up to see the view at the end, I think is what I would do here. This particular picture, you notice the sky, it's all about the sky. The sky is interesting. The sky is what you want to see. The foreground just brings you into the image. And so it's really all about the sky. So you put it in. It's an interesting sky. And again, I've done this river with my video camera, with my, flying the drone, going down the river, and following the river a little bit. It's a little nerve-wracking, but you can do it once you practice enough. When I put my drone up in the sky, after I take what I think is going to be my image, I rotate it 360 degrees to see what else is out there. Remember, it's just hovering. It's just sitting up there and hovering. So rotate around. This happened to be a day, and you can see this was way after sunrise. Way after sunrise, but it hadn't come over these mountains yet. So I'd already been videoing below on the lake, and then I popped it up, and there was this sun star with the sun coming up over the mountains. It was probably 10 or 15 minutes after, maybe 12 minutes after I had been already photographing, because it had already technically sunrise. So kind of fun to see what else is up there. Beautiful sun star. Here's another magical morning. And again, this is why I get up in the morning. The light is amazing. Hopefully you get a good sky and some reflections. Again, I photograph this pond a lot with my Nikon and with my regular camera gear, but I'm 5'4". I can't get up high enough to get a shot like this. So this is probably 20 feet in the air and just gives me a whole different perspective, gives me more reflections. There was stuff in the front of this pond that was difficult to get over. It had been grown up quite a bit in the fall. And so this allowed me to get some shots I could otherwise no longer get. And again, 5 images, auto bracketed so that I could get highs and lows and put them together. So I think what's important is that to really create your checklist, figure out how to practice your safety, figure out how to learn to fly your drones, really start to study some camera and video motions and moves and see what you're doing. And I really want to thank Howe Library for having me and for hosting the event, and use your your checklist and practice. And I hope this has helped everybody. Jared? Here we go.
Thank you, Lisa. That was wonderful. I wanted a drone before, and now I really want a drone.
It is, it is just so much fun. I mean, I just come back every single time with just this big grin on my face, and then I start to see the images I take in, and it's just magical. It's simply magical.
Someone asked earlier about the birch grove, what that very uniform ground cover was.
A lot of people ask me that, and I, it is just kind of, I think they mowed it. And it's just because it was that rust color after the winter and it was dead grass and stuff. I can't get into it to see. You see what I mean? It's posted. So I'm probably, oh gosh, I bet you I'm 8 car lengths away from it. So I can't really see it up close. I bet you there's some moss there. And it's just isn't it interesting though? I don't know if they mow it. There is a road on the back side of it. So that's why I'm thinking it might get mowed, or maybe it's just moss and stuff and it's really wet in there. I really don't know, but it's really cool, isn't it?
It's beautiful. Yeah. Someone is asking if you do this program for other libraries, and also how long have you been doing drone photography?
I got my drone in 2019. I was doing some golf course photography, and I had kind of said once, maybe I need one of these to help me with my, photographing. I was going to start a business with golf course photography. And so my husband came home with a drone for me. And then I went, oh no, wow. Now what am I going to do? So, and then of course, COVID and everything, I never continued on down that road. So I've had it since 2019. And I tend to be, for those that know me on the program, I tend to get into something and I stick with it until I spend a lot of time. So for many months, I was out with my drone every day, practicing, even if it was just half an hour, just getting it up and doing the patterns and putting it down, or driving around and seeing places. So, I do presentations. Yes, I would do it for other libraries. I do presentations for many different groups.
And at this point, everyone, feel free to turn on your video, unmute yourself, and ask your questions directly. Someone else has asked whether anyone has ever gotten permission to fly over Corbin Park to get pictures of bison, boars, elk, etc.
I don't know. That's an interest. That would be interesting.
Any tips for someone like me? I'm sorry, was there more? I wasn't sure if you were going to add anything to that.
I think that with something like that, you would just have to contact them. I'm very careful about flying over animals. I was flying one day and I had walked down from my car. I thought I was in this kind of remote area. And as I came around a corner, there were a bunch of cows there. And I didn't realize I was on the forested side, and all of a sudden there's cows and my drone's in the air. They were not happy. I immediately got my drone out of there and down and out, because you don't want to scare them. You don't want to stampede them. And certainly if I had put my drone down on the water at Dewey's Pond, those geese would have scattered. I would have scared them. And that's not what we're after. I'm not sure that Corbin Park would, want you to go and do any of the wild animals there. I doubt it. Any other questions?
Someone is asking for tips for someone who just wants to do very amateur family photos or views of our house.
Well, it depends on your budget, of course. The Mavic Mini would be perfect for that. And that's what, 500 and some odd change. And you could do that with one battery. So you wouldn't need, maybe it's $499. You wouldn't need the Fly More package. So you could easily do that for something like that. Absolutely. It depends. iPhone photos at 12 megapixels are actually very good photos in this day and age. You could blow them up to be 8x10. You get bigger than that, they start to get a little noisy. You put them on canvas, you can go a little bigger. It depends on what you're trying to do. But the Mavic Mini is probably where I would start if you want a decent enough camera to be able to play with. Anything else? Did people learn some stuff? Did people learn what they needed? I see some head shaking. How many people are going to go out and get drone now, huh? All right, I see a hand raise. See 2 hands. That's great. That's great. I love that.
Someone else is asking if you could tell us about the first drone photo or video that you sold.
First drone photo I sold. Isn't that an interesting question? Yes, I can tell you exactly. I have a friend here at Quechee who had lost his wife and to cancer. And when they first moved to Quechee, they had planted around their house maple trees. And they've watched them grow for years and years and years. And he came to me, he's a good friend. He came to me and said, is there any way you could, during the fall, take an aerial image of my home with all of those maple trees, in full foliage? And so I went up probably 2 weeks. I went up, because it changes so fast, it's little pockets. And so he bought the first, I tried to give it to him and he refused. So I probably sold my first picture to him. And then I've had a couple of magazines pick up a couple, but that was the first one that I sold. Yeah.
Frank is asking, what is the least that you would spend for a beginning drone?
Ooh, the least I would spend. With a camera, huh? I don't think I'd go under $350. if you want, now there are some people who will go and buy a drone, a really good kids drone. So not necessarily has a camera or whatever, but is a good drone. And they'll go and play with that. So if they crash it, it doesn't matter. They can, and if you really want to get into videography, that's probably the way to go. And you really practice with that. You learn to fly it fast. You learn to fly it near things. You really get ingrained with how things work. And that's, if you crash it, you crash it. Because you haven't, you got maybe $150, $120 in it. I don't mean cavalier. I don't want to be cavalier that's not a lot of money, but it's better than 1,500. And then they move up to a drone with a camera. So there's some people that will do that kind of a stepping stone. So they do that, but I don't think I'd spend under 300 or 350. I just don't think, even the Mavic, the little Mavic, it doesn't have a great camera. So depends on what you're looking for.
Laura has written, DJI offers a replacement insurance plan. I'm a very nervous drone operator, and having the plan let me start to progress my flying skills.
Absolutely.
A $50 mistake is a lot different than a $500 mistake.
Absolutely. I should have mentioned that. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. That's a great question. I have that, and I've actually renewed mine, especially that I'm now flying near, more rivers and lakes, because that's kind of where I like to kind of play with my drone. But yes, I have that. And that's good. And the friend that I went out, you saw the video that I went out with my friend, who's got the little Mavic. He put his first one right in the drink. I mean, he flew it right in. He used the wrong control. Instead of going up, he went down, and it, gone. So, went right into the pond. So, it is, you gotta be careful with them. They're not a toy. It is in fact a piece of equipment and a tool to create something.
There are several other questions. Someone is asking two questions. One, can you add a chip to your drone to make it comply with the location laws? And second, is it easy to set your camera for bracketing exposures? Okay,
first one. Yes, they will be having drones coming out with the chip built in, and DJI and Autel and all these other drones will in fact come out with an additional chip that you can add to your drone. Now, understand, you've got to be careful about what you add to a drone, because it can change center of gravity. It can change things that will change how your quadcopter functions and works. So do you need to add lights? They've got to be spaced a certain place. But I'm sure, I'm not the computer girl here, but I'm sure they can find a little geo chip that's not going to affect our drones very much. So I'm sure they will be able to add on to that. And now I've already forgotten this. Oh, the second question. Yes, you can. Yes, auto bracketing. It is called AEB. And if you go into the camera menu, the settings, and the camera menu has 3 bars on it. And that's how you know, at least on mine, you go into the camera settings and you literally just set it up, and it will just automatically do it. You can set it up for a third of an exposure all the way down, a third of exposure up. So 5 brackets. So yeah, it's not that difficult. And again, I can't tell you enough that if you do get and I'm not trying to sell DJI, but I know that there's a lot of support stuff out for DJI, because there's so many people that have them, that you just put in your model and say, how do I set the AEB? And you'll have a 2-minute video that'll show you step by step. So hopefully that will help, but it's not difficult.
Matthew is asking, do any cities or states ever ask you to drone anything, or do they have their own?
Depends on the city or state. I know a lot of companies are now starting to hire in-house drone operators. There are still some companies and states and towns that still want footage of certain things for marketing purposes. I mean, you think about both Vermont and New Hampshire with all of their marketing and how they're trying to get tourists to come, and they want drone footage from to do marketing purposes. So yes, I think if you're going to go in that direction and you can market yourself in that direction, I think there is stuff. And you can also find plenty of videos on how do you become a commercial drone operator and how do you, get paid for it. So it's just like any other business, starting an entrepreneurial business, you've got to really define what it is you want to do and how you want to promote yourself. But yeah, there's opportunities.
Kevin is asking, do you use the lens filters included with DJI, or do you do everything post-processing?
I should have mentioned ND filters, and I did not. ND filters are something you would use mostly in videography. It'll help you slow down You can slow down your camera a bit, slow down things so that you get a smoother video. And you can get, it's called a neutral density filter, and it basically blocks some of the light coming in. And so to make it simple, it just makes it easier to make smoother transitions and smoother video. I always post-process. And if you remember my little video there, I had those gorgeous Nikon shots with the sunrise. And then I had the video that was taken that I combined. I think it was 20 minutes of video to combine less than a minute. And that had, the sun was up and it was sunny. And so the whole temperature tone was different. So I had to really work on that to make them look like they moved together. They didn't need to be the same, but it needed to move from sunrise into early morning light into morning light. So you have to think about those kinds of things. So you can also just leave everything on auto. I do think that an ND filter does help with some of that, but you can also leave everything in auto. So it's just play and see what fits your eye.
I think this should be our last question. Teresa is asking, do kids' drones need to be registered?
No, because they weigh less than the 249 grams. And if you don't have to register a drone unless you're 13 or over, but it has to weigh more than the 249 grams, which is 0.55 pounds. Yep.
Well, that was wonderful. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening. And Lisa, thank you. That was really terrific.
Thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.